As compact SUVs continue to replace mid-size sedans as the preferred family vehicle here in America, it's no surprise that Hyundai's Tucson has quickly become the company's second or third best-selling vehicle in their US lineup. Now, to keep pace with all the new competition, there's a refreshed 2019 model. And today, they've loaned me this Ultimate version. But the big question I want answered is this Tucson still worth a look if you guys are looking for a small family SUV? That's what we're here to find out. So the Hyundai Tucson was a little bit late to the small SUV party. We've only seen this nameplate here in America since 2005, and this is the third generation model. It was first introduced back in 2016. I did a full review about 3 years ago, so it's definitely time for a refresh in terms of the design. But let's take a look at the front fascia. This particular one is the limited Ultimate trim, so it's the most expensive Tucson you can buy, and clearly you can see the updated front end. It's got Hyundai's new Cascade waterfall style grille with the chrome accents. It's got new LED headlights, which you can get LED headlights available on the Sport, Limited, and the Ultimate trims. All the other lower trims of the Tucson will have halogen projectors. I do like the new LED turn signals. The LED running light is this portion right here, and then you have an LED low and high beam, and then halogen fog lights at the lower front fascia. And overall, in this dusk blue exterior color, it definitely looks okay. The Tucson for me has always been a decent looking crossover, a little bit smaller than a lot of the competition, but overall I think Hyundai has done a good job with addressing the front end and making it look a little bit more updated. Now from the side profile, you can see that this is still the same vehicle that we saw back in 2016. Remember, this is just an exterior mid-cycle refresh. The Tucson's definitely a smaller crossover than a lot of the competition. It's wheelbase at 105 inches long and an overall length of 176 inches long. This is roughly 4 to 8 inches shorter than something like the new RAV4 or the Nissan Rogue or a Honda CR-V. Now let's first talk about the wheel sizes. This limited Ultimate trim comes with these 18-inch wheels. They are restyled for all the trims. You can take the pick between a 17, 18, or a 19-inch wheel that you get on the Sport. I don't particularly like the wheel design on this trim level. I really like the 19-inch wheels on the Sport, but again, you guys can pick the trim depending on the features that you like. And overall, some of the usual styling elements are here. It's got a very traditional shape. It's got these integrated roof racks. You'll get the rear tinted windows on most of the trims, and then all Tucsons will also come with rear disc brakes. But you can really see that this vehicle is a lot smaller than a lot of the competition. It kind of resembles a little bit of a hatch instead of an actual SUV. Looking at the rear of the refreshed Tucson, you can see Hyundai also made some pretty subtle changes, kind of matching what they did to the front of the vehicle. The taillights have been kind of slimmed out. They've been made a little bit more aerodynamic. They're also an LED combination taillight, where you'll have an LED brake light and taillight. The rear turn signal and then the reverse lights are just an incandescent, and you have incandescence for the rear license plate light. And overall, I like the fact that Hyundai also they retained that dual exhaust tip. That's a single tip that you used to get on the turbo model, but the rear end is definitely a little bit on the plainer side. It definitely doesn't look like it's any kind of sporty crossover like some of its competitors. Now, in terms of the cargo capacity, a power liftgate is actually included if you guys go for the Sport trims and up, and it is that hands-free function, so you can just come over here and just kick underneath the bumper if your hands are full. And looking at the cargo area, this is also a place where the Tucson is lagging behind the competition. Remember, this is smaller. You're looking at around 31 cubic feet of cargo space. That's roughly about 5 to 8 cubic feet less than what you get in a lot of the competition. If you want to fold down the second row seats, Hyundai says you get around 62 cubic feet of space. Now that is a little bit more space than when you get in the sister vehicle, the Kia Sportage, but just know that the competition offers a little bit more space. And then if you look underneath here, Hyundai does give you a temporary spare tire, so you don't have to deal with a fix-a-flat kit. So the exterior of the 2019 Tucson doesn't look all that different, but let's look at the interior and see all the changes that Hyundai has made. They are actually pretty extensive. You can see here's the key fob for the vehicle. This is the company's current smart key access system with push button start. This key fob they've been using for a couple of years. It's an interesting brown color, but the good news is you don't have to get a high trim to get the intelligent access key. It'll be included on the value trims and up, which is just one trim above the base model. Now, as you can see, you approach the door handle of the new Tucson. There is a button here on the outside of the door handle. Just touch that button here, it'll lock the doors. To unlock it, you have to touch the button again, and that'll unlock the door for you. Now, my Tester has a really nice combination. It's a beige or tan two-tone with the black that goes with this dusk blue exterior color. It definitely makes the interior look a lot more interesting. You can also get like a black or a gray interior. The seats, as you can see, they're 8-way power adjustable, heated and cooled as part of the Ultimate package, which is nice. You can see the panoramic sunroof is also part of the Ultimate package. And then one thing it is missing is no memory seats. Some competitors offer a memory seat function, so a little disappointing considering this is the fully loaded model that Hyundai didn't include memory seats. But getting into the interior of the Tucson, you can see in a typical SUV fashion, it's really easy to get in and out of. Perfect seating height to get in and out of this vehicle. And then when you shut the door, it sounds okay. It sounds relatively solid. Nothing, again, this vehicle is just very, very safe. It's like a very safe choice. There isn't really anything that's going to wow you. Now, starting the vehicle up, just put your foot on the brake, push the button here to fire up the engine. As you can see, the interior has been very heavily updated for 2019. It's got that new tablet-style floating screen, which is nice. It's got a new dash design here with the vents being relocated. It's got an 8-inch touchscreen here with this Ultimate package. And then the materials are actually kind of nice. This is a soft-touch injection molded plastic. You have some soft-touch plastic here with some faux stitching, which again looks a little bit more upscale. Down here it is hard-touch plastic, but this again reminds me completely of the 2019 Santa Fe, which I just showed you guys. The door panels are also soft touch on the front doors and on the rear doors as well, which is a nice addition. You have more leather padding over here where your elbows would rest for the armrest. The window controls feel a little bit on the cheap side. It's kind of a little of a nitpick of mine, but they just don't feel super high quality when you use them. It's only a one-touch express up-down for the driver's side, only on the driver's side, not even auto down for any of the other windows. So a little bit disappointing. You can see some buttons over here for your four-wheel drive system where you could lock the center diff. You can turn on the lane keep assist on and off, your blind spot monitoring, your power liftgate controls and whatnot. The steering wheel, as you can see, they haven't changed that. It's still a tilt telescoping wheel design. It's a heated steering wheel as well on this particular trim. That's electric power steering. You have all your cruise control and audio switches here. Hyundai did add the smart cruise control, but you guys have to go for the top trim to get that. The automatic emergency braking is standard, but if you want like the lane keep assist, you have to get the limited trim. So Hyundai is kind of limiting you to get the higher trims to get all the driver assistance tech. Now the gauges haven't changed. You can see there's a very small 3.5 millimeter screen there that just shows some color. You can switch between either a normal or a sport driving mode. You can kind of control it from this little controller on the steering wheel or this button, where you can show all your different sources like your driver assistance stuff, attention level, tire pressure, and then the all-wheel drive system where it's sending the torque. So that's all really cool. You can adjust some user settings from there as well. So this hasn't really changed. It's still a really easy gauge display to read. The center stack over here, as you can see, this has been completely changed. You still have two big knobs over here for tuning and volume, actual buttons here, hard buttons, which is nice. I just don't like the bezel. I think the bezel looks cheap because, for one, it's a very thick bezel. If you're going to do a tablet style screen, it needs to look a little bit cleaner. I do like how it's an 8-inch screen, how it's an inch bigger than the stock one. The navigation system, as you can see, it's the corporate Hyundai navigation system. Hasn't really changed. Doesn't really need to, but it's not going to really wow you. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is actually standard on all trims, which is nice. Some competitors, again, make you pay extra for the higher trim. When you put the vehicle into reverse, you can see this particular trim comes with the 360 camera, which is nice. It has reverse parking sensors as well, which is good. So again, this is all really, really class competitive in terms of the technology features. Now down here, dual zone climate control is included on the SEL trims and up. You also have heated and cooled seats, which is nice. Heated steering wheel, definitely a nice feature to have. The wireless charging pad that you see here, this is actually included on the sport trims and up, so you don't have to get a high trim again. USB was over there, 212 volts. This controls the 6-speed automatic transmission with a manual mode. No paddles on the wheel, I wouldn't really expect that. You have your automatic parking brake over here with an auto hold feature, downhill assist control, cup holders, and some good amount of storage. This little center console right here is relatively padded, but it is stitched in leather. You can see that it offers a good amount of space in there. There's no actual USB or power outlet in there as well. Hyundai instead puts it over here. The seats, I find them to be relatively comfortable. The leather could be a little bit softer, but I like how they're heated and cooled, and they offer a good amount of support. The glove compartment here, you can see see, is pretty small, but it is damped but not lined with felt. And then above you, if you want a panoramic sunroof, you have to get this trim. All the other trims just don't offer that. One thing I do like, there is LED lighting throughout the cabin, but you probably need to go for this higher trim model to get that. Now, overall, the interior definitely feels a little bit more snug than some competitors, but you have a nice view out of the front. It feels much more small and more manageable to drive versus a lot of these other crossovers that have just gotten so big. Now, looking at the second row of the Tucson, even though this vehicle is a little bit smaller than most of the competition, its backseat is actually pretty usable. Hyundai says you're getting around 38 inches of legroom back here, which is pretty comparable to what you get in the competition. Really, only the Nissan Rogue offers more, which has like 40 cubic feet. And in terms of features, I like the fact that the bench feels really nice. It has good thigh support for me. You have good legroom. It's almost a completely flat floor back here. And then in terms of features, Hyundai gives you rear seat air vents. That's included if you guys get the dual zone climate control. You have one USB port back here. And then this particular one also has 2-level heated rear seats that go with the the armrest here with the 2 cup holders. So overall, the rear seat is definitely nice. Not quite as spacious as something like the Nissan Rogue, but still usable for a lot of American families. So to go with the exterior changes of the Tucson, Hyundai has actually made some changes under the hood as well. Now, the one thing that I really liked about this generation is it offered a turbo engine. It offered a 1.6 turbo, but Hyundai has gotten rid of that for 2019. They've replaced it instead with this 2.4 liter naturally aspirated gasoline direct injection 4-cylinder. This engine is pretty familiar. It's the same motor that's the base motor in the Kia Sportage, this car's platform make. You can still take your pick between a base 2-liter engine that makes 161 horsepower. This makes 181 horsepower and 175 foot-pounds of torque. So if you're keeping score, this is more horsepower than the 1.6, but less torque, like 20 less foot-pounds of torque. Now, the biggest reason for Hyundai changing the motor is the transmission. All of the Tucsons now use a 6-speed conventional automatic. The 7-speed dual clutch that was kind of jerky in the old one definitely has been removed, and a lot of consumers, I imagine, who buy a vehicle in the second will probably like the change. Now, Hyundai does offer this Tucson in either front or all-wheel drive. All-wheel drive is a $1,400 option. I couldn't find any tow specs on this vehicle, but I do know that the Kia Sportage can tow up to like 1,500 pounds, so I'm imagining this is roughly the same. In fuel economy, unfortunately, the Tucson kind of lags behind the competition. If you guys get a base 2-liter in front-wheel drive, it'll do as good as 23 in the city and 30 on the highway. This particular application does 21 in the city and 26 on the highway. Thankfully, it does run on regular gas, and as this one is equipped, it weighs around 3,600 pounds, so it's a little bit on the heavier side. Now, the good news is for enthusiasts, apparently Hyundai is working on an N performance version of the Tucson, which could use the Veloster N's 2-liter turbo and maybe a unique transmission. So we should be seeing an N version come out of this SUV soon, but until then, this is the most powerful engine you can get. Let's get out on the road and see how it performs. So when I first drove this generation Tucson 3 or 4 years ago, the one thing that I really liked about the car was its charismatic turbo engine. I mean, back then, turbo engines were a little bit harder to find. Most people have, or most other brands had naturally aspirated 4-cylinders. So I was pretty sad when I found out that Hyundai had discontinued the turbo engine and replaced it with a naturally aspirated 2.4 liter engine. Now, first getting out on the road in this 2019 model, you know, the driving dynamics of this vehicle are pretty much just the same as all the other competition now. The turbo engine, which gave it so much character, that's gone. So it's been replaced by a smooth 2.4 liter 4-cylinder with a 6-speed automatic, a conventional 6-speed automatic. And I will say the 6-speed auto is much better at shifting versus the dual clutch. It is much smoother. It doesn't get confused as much. It just kind of goes about its business without any fuss. And that's really what people in this segment expect. So I can see why Hyundai did that. Now, the one thing about the Tucson that you'll notice immediately after driving the competition is how much smaller this vehicle feels. At 176 inches long, this is literally the same size as something like the first generation CR-V. Actually, it might be 2 inches shorter still than that vehicle. This is a small car, and you feel that when you're behind the road. It feels like I'm driving like a hatch that's been slightly lifted up. It's just a very refined vehicle. In fact, at highway speeds, it's really quiet in here. It's got a really comfortable ride quality. This ride quality is on the, is basically as comfortable as the last Nissan Rogue that I drove, which again has a very smooth ride. So Hyundai has done a good job with making this thing free of any annoyances, really. I mean, the only annoyance I can think of is it's just kind of boring to drive when I put my foot down. The transmission is good to shift there, but man, it just takes a long time for this thing to get up to speed. The 0 to 60 time has actually gotten worse with this new engine. It used to do it in like 7.5 seconds. This new engine feels like 8.5 seconds, so it feels like it's about a second slower to 60 now. versus the old turbo engine. And again, it is slower than the old one, but it's pretty much class competitive. The really quick ones like the CR-V, 7.5 seconds, or the really quick ones like the Mazda CX-5 Turbo, which will do it in like 6.4 seconds. But other than that, visibility in here is also very good. You have good view out of the front. Side mirrors are large. The driver assistance in this vehicle, the active lane keep assist, does a really good job of keeping you in the lane. The adaptive cruise control will come to a full stop, but you have to get the ultimate trim. So you have to spend $32,000 where you get like a CR-V or a RAV4. You don't have to get a top trim. You can actually get that on a base trim level, especially on the Toyota where it comes standard on every model. Now in terms of quietness, the engine, you know, when you get it up in the high revs, it actually is relatively quiet still. You don't really hear it. Road noise is pretty subdued. Wind noise is also pretty subdued. So this will make an excellent road trip vehicle that gets, you know, that's comfortable to drive, that's easy to drive, that's packed with features. I mean, I love the, you know, infotainment system in this vehicle with the 360 camera. I love the heated and cooled seats. Just wish it had memory seats. But other than that, I find very little faults with this car, other than the fact that it's just boring to drive, which, let's face it, most of the other cars are also boring to drive. Now this vehicle's platform is actually shared with the Hyundai Elantra, so it's got a fully independent rear suspension, unlike the Elantra, which has a twist beam on the baser models. But you can see here, soft suspension tuning. So this is definitely the more comfort-oriented model. Ooh, the steering doesn't really provide much feedback either. You basically find yourself wanting to slow down in turns, kind of like the way the Nissan Rogue is. This is not like a Mazda CX-5 where it feels like you could attack corners all day long, kind of similar to driving like a sports sedan, or at least a sportier sedan that's just kind of lifted up. So if Hyundai does decide to do an N performance version, they've got a lot of work to do with the chassis of this vehicle to just stiffen it up. But also they need to try to preserve the ride quality, but this thing could easily use another 100 horsepower. That'd be nice if they put the 2-liter turbo in this thing. As it is now, it's a great daily driver, it's a great commuter car, but this is definitely on the low end of the fun factor for sure. Putting your foot down, you just have to be patient for it to get to 60, but it eventually will do that in around 8.5 seconds. So yes, this thing is considerably slower, but you don't buy these things to go drag racing. When I drive a vehicle like this, I kind of appreciate the fact that I can put it into its normal mode, just kind of cruise along, not have to worry so much about driving quickly, or just you drive at a much more relaxed pace when you drive a vehicle like this. And it's again why people love these so much. You sit up higher, they're more practical than sedans. They feel very car-like. They ride really nice. They have adequate acceleration, but way more cargo space. So there's a reason why everybody is replacing their mid-size sedans with these compact crossovers. And the Tucson still represents a pretty good choice. It's just kind of the forgotten vehicle because the rest of this car is just honestly very forgettable. Now, let's talk a little bit about the gas mileage because it is lower versus the competition. 21-26, and I've been averaging around 20 miles to the gallon, mostly city driving. I did push it up to 25 on the highway, so not great gas mileage. I was hoping this thing would do over 30, which most of the competition will do 30 or more mpg. So Hyundai's got to work on the fuel economy. What it could use is just, more gears in the transmission. It could use start-stop. It could use like all the technology to make this thing get better gas mileage. So just keep in mind that Hyundai is still kind of lagging in the fuel economy department. But in terms of the everyday practicality, value, you like the styling of the vehicle, this is still one of the better options to choose. And I would most definitely pick this over something like a Jeep Compass, the new one, or the Fiat 500X crossover or whatever, which is essentially a Jeep Renegade. But it's tough for me to choose this one over something like the Subaru Forester, the Toyota RAV4, Honda CR-V, or the Mazda CX-5. The Rogue also still has its strengths, although this is more pleasant to drive than the Rogue for me because it has this conventional automatic, but the Rogue offers a lot of value for money, and it also is the roomier choice. You really have to want to choose this car because you want a smaller vehicle than the rest of the competition. So with so many choices in the compact crossover segment, it's pretty easy to forget about the Hyundai Tucson and its sister vehicle, the Kia Sportage. Despite the fact that this is still the company's most popular model, or one of their most popular models, it really doesn't sell in the numbers that Toyota does with the RAV4, the Nissan Rogue, or the Honda CR-V. Hyundai actually managed to move about 150,000 of these in all of 2018, which is an increase in sales. In 2017, they did around 117,000 sales. And overall, when I first drove this third generation model back in 2016, I was actually really impressed. I like liked the turbo engine that it offered, although the dual clutch kind of annoyed me at times with its jerky shifts. Now, after driving this 2019 model, I'm happy to report that Hyundai has added a pretty good dose of refinement to this vehicle. The 6-speed automatic is much smoother. The 2.4-liter engine, while it is slower and less exciting, does get slightly better real-world gas mileage, and most people who drive these things are really going to appreciate the added smoothness, the added refinement. It is one of the most refined 4-cylinder engines in the segment that I've driven. It's actually a really smooth engine that really surprised me. Its interior is definitely a little bit more cramped versus the competition, but not super cramped to where you're going to notice it all the time. The cargo area is still very usable. It's still just a little bit of a boring SUV, but let's face it, most vehicles in this segment are a little bit boring. But I am super curious to find out when Hyundai decides to introduce the N version of this vehicle with a turbocharged engine and all-wheel drive. I think that will be a really interesting addition whenever Hyundai decides to show that vehicle. But if you guys are looking to purchase this 2019 Hyundai Tucson Ultimate, what's it going to cost? Well, this is a less expensive vehicle in typical Hyundai fashion and has very strong value. It starts at $23,200 for a base SE with front-wheel drive, at about $1,400 for all-wheel drive. For me, the sweet spot in the trim lines is probably the Sport trim, which will give you 19-inch wheels, the LED headlights, the power liftgate, the dual-zone climate control. That one will start at around $30,000 for a two-wheel drive model. This limited Ultimate, that as it sits, is basically the only trim that you have to get if you guys want a panoramic sunroof or the adaptive cruise control. This one is around $32,500 plus $1,000 for destination. All in, my testers a tick over $34,000 with the carpeted floor mats. It does make it less expensive than something like the RAV4, CRV, the Rogue, or the Mazda CX-5, but just keep in mind that other competitors offer more power, they're slightly roomier, they're slightly more stylish, but the Tucson still remains a relatively good deal, especially if you guys are looking for strong value. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Hyundai Tucson Ultimate. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.